business was pretty slow before 1825.
Yes, Judah, fella. Yes. I say, you fellow, how does this creature work?
Oh yes, do tell us, how does it work?
You see, the most important thing here is that a pint of water turned to steam expands 600 times.
The gentleman with the distinct Northumbrian accent is Robert Stevenson. He doesn't know it, but by putting that machine to work hauling wagons and carriages, he's about to provide England with an empire, and the world with a new kind of revolution. An industrial revolution.
Valve located here, which directs the steam to and fro. It's that simple.
May we alight?
I see no reason why not.
Robert's enduring pragmatism and love of invention had left genie out of the bottle. Or to be more precise, he and others, like his father George, had put the genie to work inside it, under pressure.
Blasted up the chimney without a sound.
The goods that industry produced were about to become available to any self-respecting nation that happened to have a railroad. And everyone had to have one. Even people living in such exotic and far-off places as America.
There is no reason to expect any material improvement in the breed of horses. In my judgment, the man is not living who knows what the breed of locomotives is to please our man.
But what really surprised the wags who thought the railroad's sole purpose was to haul coal was the number of people who actually wanted to get on the thing and go for a ride.
There's Tom St. Joe, after a while.
But even after 3 decades, the West might as well have been the moon. To many, the railroad meant the realization of a dream. To those who desperately wanted to stretch and grow, it meant vast, unspoiled open spaces. To those who had come from places where competition, intolerance, or their sheer number had stifled them, it meant freedom. To those whose appetite for land was so strong it might drive them to cowardly deeds, it meant power. To every one of them, it was the West. 1,200 wagon wheel splitting miles west. Great enterprise, fable tells us, requires a solitary figure blessed with foresight, ingenuity, and a good deal of common sense, not to mention unbridled ruthlessness and a generous measure of greed. But it wouldn't take an iron hand to build the Central Pacific Railroad. A handshake among 4 Sacramento businessmen would do the job. When it came to the art of partnership, the Big Four took the cake. Stanford, Crocker, Huntington, and Hopkins. As civil engineer Theodore Judah found, they not only took the cake, but the plate, too.
Gentlemen, Judah here tells me that the trail between Donner Pass and Emigrant Gap would make a suitable route for a railroad to the Nevada mines. Isn't that right, Theodore?
If it is not, Mr. Stanford, then I have shivered through many a bone-chilling night for nothing. I've been over every square foot of it. By glory, gentlemen, look at it. It's a grade, all right, all the way from Dutch Flat to Donner Summit. I know it.
Judah is looking for backing. He wants to form a company to undertake the project.
So we've heard. Rumor has it, Mr. Judah, that your idea was given little credence in San Francisco.
Yes, that is true, sir.
Before Mr. Hopkins and I can consider committing resources to a venture, we require some guarantee of its ultimate success. Now, Judah, you understand we're businessmen. It is in our nature to be skeptical of any scheme, especially one as grand as you envision. We can see, perhaps better than you, the need for a railroad, and certainly the opportunities which might arise from such an enterprise, well...
But we do not, by necessity, approach any undertaking with the same ardor with which you apparently do. Above all, a venture must be good business, which means that I hasten to add that good judgment is far more important to us than good faith or enthusiasm.
But Mr. Crocker, as I've said, I've been over every square inch of those mountains. All the idle talk about the fate of the Donner Party in 46 is balderdash. The building of a railroad is entirely different.
Now. Gentlemen, I, for one, find Theodore's proposal very interesting. And I don't think it can do any harm to give the man what he'll need to convince us further.
Just as long as it's sound business. Well, the cost, at least at the outset, will be modest. Certainly less than it would take to build the damn thing.
All right, Judah. I believe we can spare enough capital to shore up your survey. Might be wise to extend the overall exploration. After all, our proof might need to be pretty impressive to convince certain people. Gentlemen, you concur?
Yeah, certainly.
If you prepare a list of what you need from Mr. Hopkins.
Gentlemen, I don't know quite what to say, but I can promise that you won't be sorry for having faith, for having trust in me, sir. I'll get that list for you immediately.
I reckon those mining camps could provide some fine trade. Certainly with the railroad, we'd have an edge over the wagons.
Yes. And with trouble brewing in the East, the Union might need California. And a way to get to it.
There's one thing, though.
What's that, Charles?
That young man, unbridled fanaticism like his, has always been trouble to me.
Yes, Charles, he certainly is excitable. Like a cat in a room full of rocking chairs. But I think we can rely on him.
I suppose you're right. Still, he could be a bit tiresome.
It was a gray, blustery day in Sacramento when the first muddy spade of earth was turned, realizing Theodore Judah's wish to see the inauguration of a transcontinental railroad. But the visionary who had pursued his beloved railroad would never see his dream realized. A dispute with the Big Four would drive Judah to sell his shares in the Central Pacific. In a desperate attempt to regain lost influence in the project, he undertook the treacherous journey east. Crossing the Isthmus of Panama, he contracted yellow fever and died in New York. Tragic ironies like his were common in the developing West. In time, the railroad's safety would diminish the need to tell such tales, but not without creating some pathos of its own. In fact, the building of the Central Pacific Railroad may have cornered the market in unsung heroes. Now, it's true that 2,000 laborers, mostly Irish, composed the army of men needed to start work on the Central Pacific. But the skill, resourcefulness, and courage mustered to complete the job was irrefutably Chinese. They constructed 40 miles of wooden snow sheds and bore 15 tunnels through solid granite, where progress was measured not in miles nor in feet, but in inches, as few as 4 bone-rattling inches a day. Failure to make fair mention of the formidable Chinese contribution is conspicuous. If this was the work of giants, then these men must be counted among them. On Monday, May 10, 1869, the Central Pacific and Union Pacific Railroads joined at Promontory, Utah. What once took months would take only a week, and perhaps for the first time, a whole nation celebrated. Time is often the only remedy for injustice. When it came to the steam locomotive, a technology would replace inequity by serving people of every origin. qualities associated with the railroad, like respect for authority, conformity to routine, and pride in technical skill, would be assimilated into the notion of a national character. And there was plenty of room for character. A schedule had to be kept. While there was certainly demand, what America was looking for was a little supply.
Let me call you sweetheart. I'm in love with you.
Railroads allowed the West to come of age. No doubt about it, people were witnessing the birth of consumerism. And what a relief. You see, it was pretty tough being a consumer before the railroad. Commerce amounted to nothing more than a howdy-do to your neighbor, and more often than not, what they were selling, you were selling. Railroads allowed producers a genuine field day. Consumers could live hundreds, even thousands of miles from producers. In California, a harvest unlike the world had ever seen found an appetite to match its abundance. And to a far greater degree, that appetite was affecting the nature of supply. Markets expanded, and people became dependent upon people who they might never meet for their survival. As well as for things that might add joy and a sense of meaning and connection to a larger world. Remote places in a vast land, which had seemed harsh and lonely for a few cut-and-dried reasons, became a lot more comfortable to live in. But as news traveled faster and faster, people discovered and helped create an increasingly complex world, with a complex world's problems and a complex world's dreams. The railroads acted for all the world like a catalyst, transforming industry and society. The coal, iron, and steel needed to keep the dream growing were used as well as carried by the railroad. Tons of raw materials went by freight from country to city, and tons of consumer goods went from city to country. And thousands of passengers, happy as clams, went along. Was it any surprise that tastes and interests became more diverse? Something new was definitely afoot. It had to do with a sense of well-being, of comfort. Could the notion of a secure future actually withstand the light of day? Only time would tell. One thing was sure, though. The American dream had arrived by rail. Folks who might never have ventured far from their hometown began to do so as a matter of course. Not only had railroads supplied the means, they had kindled the desire to travel. Merely possessing something just wasn't enough anymore. Realizing the dream meant going out there and experiencing it firsthand. And for sheer spectacle, no conveyance could compete with the might or the majesty of the railroad. As the dream evolves, the technology changes. So rapidly it's often difficult to sort out cause from effect. Yet railroads have left an indelible imprint on every aspect of California. The location of its cities and towns, jobs and industries, agriculture, tourism, even its political institutions have all been shaped by the railroad. And generations of men and women have worked to keep the dream and the technology going. 3 generations of African Americans worked on the rails and encouraged their children to do the same. In California, Mexican American families have worked the railroads for decades. As candy dancers, they supplied the muscle and grit it took to keep the dream on the road. The tradition continues.
When I was a girl, I used to run away from my mother when I got angry at her, but away with the trains, and just know in my heart that that's really what I wanted to do with my life, is to become a locomotive engineer.
I've seen a lot of changes in the 44 years that I've been working on the railroad. And the main change, I think, was the transition from steam to diesel, but also the women that are working on the railroad now. We have women engineers, brakemen, firemen, and also you're a locomotive engine, which I believe is the only female locomotive engines in the United States.
The best thing about this job is, in our whole profession, is the way people get along and stick together, and there's that sense of unity.
Like one big family.
Railroads influence us in ways which, while almost intangible, still move us deeply. They have become a part of our imagination, a part of our dreams. The enduring image of the railroad has been preserved for all time in historic photographs, then film, but especially in the locomotives, cars, and artifacts which remain. To see one of these, to touch one, or to hear one, is to have the vision immediately reawakened. They are made of more than iron, steel, and steam. They are the evidence of over a century of a people's hopes and desires, some realized and some destroyed. They are the evidence of a nation's ambition and of fantastic change. The evidence of a dream.